Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Casey Prince, the founder and executive director of Ubuntu Football. If you haven't heard of them, their mission is to mentor and educate the next generation of great African leaders, society changers, and footballers. But before we begin, remember if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hi, Casey, and welcome.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let's learn more about Ubuntu Football, shall we? How did it begin? I always like to talk to founders. I think there's a passion behind it. So, how and when did the organization begin?
Yeah, well, we like to say that talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity isn't. And that reality slammed my wife, Sarah, and I in the face when we arrived in Cape Town in early 2008 to spend 3 months exploring, yeah, kind of international missions. And we wanted to see if this was something that we might be called to. But in my mind, we were just getting this out of our system. And the problem, though, is that South Africa gets in you and it just doesn't let go. And I think there'll be many people who have visited here or have been here before, and they can attest to what that's like. And so over those 3 months that we were here, we were really overwhelmed by the amount of talent and will and potential. And many of the people that we met in these communities were also heartbroken at the unbelievable challenges these people faced, ever realized their full potential. And so we're also aware of the vacuum of positive leadership that existed in the communities that needed it most. And so, yeah, we were wrestling with that unrealized potential that we were observing and building relationships with those around us. And I met a guy named Michael Jenkins, who over that time proposed this not so ludicrous idea of us building a football academy that would invest in talented young footballers in ways that were profound and transformational. And through that process, they would be prepared for and access opportunities to be the hope that their families and their communities so desperately needed. So 15 months later, in October 2009, we arrived back on these beautiful shores with now a 9-month-old little girl in tow, and a mission to holistically develop elite footballers towards becoming citizens of significance. And so we focus on these three P's. We really set out to unleash their full potential in every possible area. We prepare them for platforms of influence in and out of outside the game and really help them discover their purpose. And I really feel like that's what we do for them. But really believing that through them, our vision is to see families, communities, and society healthy and thriving because of their influence. And so, yeah, so that's what we've been doing ever since. And I can give you the long, detailed version of how it started from, yeah, from those days. But you let me know what else you'd like to hear.
Oh, I think it's great to know this bit that you and your wife were seeking for something, right? Something meaningful to do. And it's beautiful to see how you found this project and find this passion on it. You mentioned before we move to other things, but you mentioned the challenges, right? You briefly said that these young kids were facing a lot of challenges in their communities. What are those challenges exactly? I mean, what are the most pressing issues that you guys kind of need to work on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a multifaceted question, or a really multifaceted answer, I guess. But I mean, the effects of apartheid have been longstanding and really, damaging for centuries now, or not centuries, but decades now. And that's led to a lot of things. So we have dramatic unemployment here in South Africa of like probably 35%, and it's really bad in sort of youth unemployment. So there's really a lot of people unemployed, which then leads to, significant poverty, which then leads to we have real drug abuse problems. We have a lot of gang issues. And so we primarily work, or really only work in colored and Black communities where, yeah, the poverty is at a fairly extreme rate, and where those then subsequent issues are a real thing. And so yeah, that they're in schools that are very substandard. So there's no real obvious hope or a pathway out of your situation, and there's no real obvious way for your full potential to be realized. And that's what we've, yeah, really tried to figure out is we're working with specifically with footballers, but really not focusing on football alone, but really focusing on the whole person and how do we kind of bring them to a place of them really knowing who they really are and believing that they're, yeah, special and significant and can do really important things.
I think sometimes that's all we need, right? Someone that trusts us, see the potential in us, and would like to invest. And maybe football is a good way to do it, I think. But we're going to talk about it later. Before we go, I I am kind of curious about the name Ubuntu. What does that mean?
All right. Yeah, so Ubuntu is a term, it's a Bantu word, which Bantu is sort of the base language for many of the South African languages. So in South Africa, we have 11 official languages, English being one of those, Afrikaans being one, but then we have these sort of nine native tribal languages. And so Bantu, there's a version of Ubuntu within all of them, but it essentially means the best one-word definition is interconnectedness, that I am because we are. My humanity is bound up in your humanity. So if I am suffering, then we're all suffering. If I'm celebrating and full of joy, then we are all celebrating and full of joy. So it was I think it's a real expression of how many people live here. Not just in South Africa, but around the continent. But it was also a very like a specific rallying cry during the struggle against apartheid of like, for people to say like we're in this together, and until we are all whole, none of us are whole. And yeah, so it was a term that my wife came across in her graduate studies, and it just became this like sort of idea and philosophy that meant a lot to us. So when it came down to naming the organization, yeah, we thought it was appropriate, and yeah, we've tried to live that out, and we've tried to model it, and then get the boys and the kids to really, yeah, live that out in their time here.
Now, Casey, going back
Mhm.
to thinking about football, sports actually as a way to empower youth, let's say. Uh, I from what I understood is that like for you guys, football is a way, right? It's not just the end goal. It's just part of the way. And you're going for a holistic approach, right? So how do you do that? What exactly are your activities? How do you engage these kids on your organization?
Yeah, so we are definitely interested in the whole person, and we're really the only place that an elite footballer can be holistically developed in Southern Africa. And yeah, you can be a good footballer and get good football training in a place that doesn't care about you as a whole person, and you can get holistic sort of development, but not really elite football development in other places. And so, yeah, we've tried to be unique that we're bringing real excellence to the football part, but while caring about the whole person. So it has evolved a lot since 2011, but now currently in the football program, everyone from grade 7, so around 12, 13 years old, and up to the end of high school in grade 12, they're all educated in our own school. So we have a registered school with our Department of Education that's giving them a very small class size independent education. So the whole class might be 8, 7, 8, 9 kids in a whole grade. And then in many of their subjects, they're splitting because these are in this level math and these are in that level math or something like that. So they're in very small class sizes. So education is a big part of what we do. And then that's sort of the base of which we work. We take the football part very seriously. So they train 4 days a week with really amazing coaches, play in a competitive environment. And then we spend a lot of time on what we define as formation. So it's the character, leadership, and spiritual formation of the kids. And yeah, so some of that is programs. So we have Wednesday, sort of the formation day. So we have a couple programs. One is like just a character education program that happens first thing in the morning, and then the second one is around lunchtime. And it's a program we call Future Ready, which is really, I think it's self-explanatory. It's really trying to prepare the kids for the future that they're going to encounter when they leave us. So we talk about friendships and relationships and financial literacy and goal setting, just all the things that, yeah, they need to be thinking about in a progressive way. So what the grade 12s are dealing with is different from what the grade 7s are dealing with. And then part of that program is a thing we call dual dream. And that's to say, look, we know every kid in our academy wants to be a professional footballer, and that's fine. And we want them to pursue it with all they have. And we're going to give them every opportunity to pursue it. And we've had lots of kids who've had that, who've ended up there. But we really say, look, even if you're in that sort of 1% that make it, and you're in the 1% who have a long career, you're still going to have a long, you finish at 35 and still have a lifetime of working to do. So what is that other thing that you're equally passionate about, that's going to get you excited? Whether that's immediately after high school graduation, or if that's at 35 when you've stopped playing. And so we call that the dual dream, and really encouraging kids to start to pursue the other thing that they're equally passionate about. So, and we really feel like formation is the glue of everything we do. It's the way, every staff person is mentoring, the kids towards becoming who they're supposed to be, whether they're a coach or a teacher or a driver, or working at our residence. They're all sort of doing the same thing. So, or we're all sort of pulling in the same direction. So that's kind of the basics of what we do. The three sort of legs of the stool are the football, the education, and the formation.
I think those three go along really, really well, and it's quite powerful, I'd say, to see your involvement with these kids' lives because from what you're saying, the perspective I have is that you were really growing up with them, let's say, like moving them
Mhm.
forward as they advance in life, and that's something that I think many kids need, and we don't always have ways to offer this to them. So I'm really glad to see this work, this beautiful work that you guys are doing. Now, Casey, we talked before about the challenges that the kids face, but what are the challenges that you guys face to keep up with work? How is that going?
Mm. It's always interesting. It's never boring. Yeah, I think some of our challenges are, the kids face significant challenges. They all have trauma of some level. You cannot be a kid growing up in South Africa without some level of trauma, and that comes out in different ways and at different times. Yeah, you have long history of, racial issues and tension and, disparities and stuff that you're having to work through. So as an outsider, I'm having to learn all the time, um, yeah, about the different nuances of the issues, and how do I speak into them, or how do I actually just keep my mouth shut and learn, and those sorts of things. So it's always a struggle, as a nonprofit, you know, keeping the doors open and the lights on, financially is always a big struggle. It's a big challenge, and something we work through all the time. Yeah, and sometimes we're actually we're facing what's the phrase? Like we're blanking on the phrase. Basically, we're struggling with our own success. There's a better phrase for that. But yeah, we've had a lot of success on the field, and sometimes kids want to short circuit that process, and people in the sort of in the margins will think they can make money off these kids and their situations, off the work that we've done with them. And so we struggle at times with kids disappearing because somebody's promised them something that ultimately is really just about them. So that's one of our big struggles lately, is just, yeah, having had too much success, having grown the platform and having everyone watch, then you sort of run that risk. And that's only painful because you know that the kids really being, manipulated and used. So we've had about 25 players who've been part of professional teams, here and in Europe, and so we don't have a problem getting them to that stage, and we want them to finish high school and finish the journey before they take that step. So that's been a real challenge lately, is how do we deal with that and protect the kids and the families from people who are not so well intentioned.
It must be really hard to see, kids getting manipulated that way. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, like as a challenge, right? To be careful
Mhm.
and keep your mind on keeping them close to you. So yeah. But now moving to the future, What are the next
Mm.
steps for you guys in the near future, let's say 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that sounds like far away. 5 to 10 years. That's near future. Wow. Um, yeah, I mean, one of the big exciting things for us this year is we've added our first four girls to the full school program, the full sort of academy program. It's something that, yeah, we've kind of been wrestling with for a long time. I think South Africa has really grown its emphasis on women's football over the last, say, 5 years. And our women's national team has been successful, and there's a lot more girls playing, and there's a lot more opportunities for girls to play. So we felt like the time was right, and sort of the infrastructure around us was in place. Um, and so, yeah, we're kind of trying to dip our toe in the water and get a feeling for if we can really handle this. So, four girls have joined the school program in grade 7 and 8, and yeah, they're doing great. They are Yeah, I think they are going to excel as players. Obviously, they train and play with the boys, and these boys are already, the best boys in the city, really. So you can imagine for a girl that same age to be training and playing in that environment, she's gonna just be like a rocket, I think. So those four are doing that. So I think the challenge now, in the next few years looks like, okay, how do we now add to that and grow to that in a way that's sustainable and that's helpful, and then yeah, figuring out what the sort of endpoint is for those young ladies. So that's one of the big exciting things, and then just continuing to improve, and then try to figure out if there's a commercial model that can sustain us, so we don't have to be purely nonprofit forever. We'd like to figure out if there's a way to commercialize things in a way that provides some sustainable revenue. So those are some of the exciting but challenging things we face.
Yeah, they are challenging, they are bold, but I think there is a vision in this, so go for it. Do go for it. And thinking about this, and the challenges that you mentioned before, also, for the listeners or viewers on YouTube that are watching us right now, what are the best ways to help you guys keep going?
Yeah, I mean, we would love people, obviously, to share financially if they're able to donate. Obviously, as a purely nonprofit, that's how we exist. We're registered as nonprofit in the U.S. and in South Africa, and so there are easy ways to give, but we can also take donations across Europe and around the world. So our website, ubuntufootball.com, has all that information. But if you're in South Africa and especially if you're in Cape Town, you'd want to get involved sort of hands-on. There are ways to do that. So if you reach out to us, we'd love to get you involved. And even in the US, we've had 22 boys go and study on scholarships in the US. And we plan to continue sending boys there and then eventually girls there. And so we're always looking for mentors or people who can connect us to summer employment. Yeah, people who just want to get involved with the kids that are there. Yeah, that's another way. So if there's people in the US who want to get involved hands-on, there are ways. If there's people in South Africa, there are ways. But yeah, anywhere around the world, we'd love your support, and certainly your donations.
We will make sure to add a link to your page on the description of this episode so everyone can click and get involved or at least learn more. I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
Casey, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks for what you're doing to share great stories with people.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. And for everyone listening, also thank you so much for staying with us for one more episode. And remember, if you liked it, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation and we can spread the word about the importance of the Ubuntu football. Check their page, and I see you in the next episode. Bye.